Hello and welcome to Platinum Politics. I'm your host Mace, and today we have another episode of Platinum Panel, an open panel discussion where we allow members of the Discord to join the call, and we have a list of topics lined up, and we just discuss them. That's all it is. If you want to put your 2 cents in, join the Discord down below, like, comment, and subscribe. And now, time for this episode of Platinum Panel.
By examining his own attitude towards the possibilities of peace.
Tariffs on Canadian steel would be entirely unjustified.
I have detractors? I don't believe it.
I have some more topics if y'all want to hear them. All right, I got one. Should prisoners and convicted felons have the right to vote?
Yes.
Depends.
What do you mean? What does it depend on?
Like a level severity of what their conviction and felony is, and then also depending on what the level is, what level of voting as well. Like if the voting is to be done, you're voting for school districts, voting for laws to be implemented within the established city, or laws being implemented into state or federal. Who's going to be mayors, governors, the president, a whole lot of it to list off right there. But like,
Give us like an
if they want better prison treatment, and there's a vote that can be done, I feel like they could do that. Vote for better prisons. If they have children, allow them to vote, but again, it depends on the severity of their felony and charges.
I think the only thing that we should restrict from voting is an insanity plea. Like if you plead insanity, like you're telling the court that you are not mentally all right, and I think there should at least be maybe not taking that right away forever, because people can get that kind of thing fixed to some degree to where they can at least make choices. But otherwise, no, I think just felonies, period. Like if they are out of go ahead. If they are members of society, they should have somewhat of a say of what society is doing. You know what I mean? I feel like it's stupid just to say, oh, you committed a bad crime, served your time, and now you can't vote, and now you can't, own a gun. You know what I mean? I
just
feel
because you did something once doesn't mean that you should be restricted forever. Exactly. I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. Here's the thing. I feel like if you have done something it's a problem with the whole prison system in general, but I think that in a US context, if you do something bad that is enough to get you segregated from society, because that's literally what prison is, it's segregation, why should you be able to have an influence on the outside society? If you are not to be released, let's say it is a life sentence, even though I kind of don't agree with life sentences, but if it is a life sentence and you're going to not be able to get in society again, then I don't believe you should have the right to vote, because essentially that's a non-societal actor voting in an election. You are behind bars and you have made a huge mistake. You cannot be part of society, so why should you be able to vote? That's kind of my take. So I think that your vote should count once you're out of prison, not necessarily when you're in prison. But if you were previously a felon, I don't think that your right to vote should be taken away.
See,
that's kind of my opinion.
I agree with that as well. If you are in prison, but on top of that, I don't think prison should just be society isolation anyway. It should be more rehabilitation, fixing these people, getting them ready to be back into society. But I feel especially after, if you were to go through that, of course, vote. You know what I mean? If you've rehabilitated, if you're hey, I'm gonna make better choices for my life, I'm not gonna commit crime anymore. Yeah, of course, you should definitely have a say in what happens.
The Norwegian method, I think the way that Norway goes about things is super beneficial. I think that Norway legitimately has a really good system. They have only a 25% recidivism rate. It's insanely good. They do a lot of good work in Norway to rehabilitate people. They just give them compassion. They give them forgiveness. They give them, freedom. They get to live in extremely healthy sanitary conditions, and they get to learn skills, they get to learn a trade, so they have literally no reason to commit crime, And I think that if you were to combine that with proper mental health services, you could really easily pinpoint and target and pick who is good and who is bad, and who should or who shouldn't be released back into the general public as fast or as quick, or as fast or as long. So I think that I don't know, I just think I like Norway's. system. I think it's really good.
Oh yeah, Mace, I was gonna say, man. So if your insanity plea thing is like that person is like not, I guess like if they can't even be considered like I guess I think the word's liable for like a crime they did because they're like so crazy and like so out of it that they probably shouldn't be able to vote. Does that mean you should also exclude people who are like mentally disabled from voting? Like so I think at the moment people with Down syndrome can vote. So would you want to stop them from being able to vote, or I guess maybe even people with other mental conditions?
I think there is an argument for some people to not be able to vote, but not just generally. You know what I mean? Like I feel like
It would be specific ones, yeah, but or I guess if it's like super bad.
Like that's the thing is like, you know, there are Down syndrome people that are literally just straight up active members of society with a little help, but they're just as active of member society as me and you. They have a job, they have hobbies, they do, you know what I mean? They do all the same things. But then again, there are some people like, you know, my significant other's brother, like he's mute, he's autistic, he literally can't speak. You have to know how to communicate with him. So I don't per se think that he should be able to vote, you know, just like I don't think he should be able to have a gun, you know. Like
True.
I feel like there's a line.
Have guns?
Do what?
Do you say autistic individuals should not have guns?
There's levels. There's levels. Like he's like the example I was giving. Like he literally can't speak. He can't, you know, do things on his own.
What's he gonna do with a gun anyway? Then
Exactly. You know what I mean? Not that that's like the biggest deal, but like voting, I feel like that is a key one. But I'll use for example my significant other's other brother, who is also disabled, but he's also pretty functioning. He can get up. He can go to the bathroom on his own. He can cook his own food. He can do all those kinds of things. I don't think there's anything that should restrict him from being able to vote.
Not both. I mean, I'm an autistic guy who literally got into the military who also owns firearms.
yeah, like
And
I
assume you're very responsible with him too. Like I am not saying that is the factor alone. You know what I mean? I feel like we need,
No.
we need to
I
figure.
mean, it is called a spectrum for a reason.
Exactly.
I mean, so when it comes to my autistic level, as I've been explained by other psychologists, I'm at such a high level that nobody can pick up on it.
Yeah, so you're basically Asperger.
Asperger's individuals are usually not very social.
Well, it depends. It's also a spectrum. Like Asperger's is outdated, but like the thing about Asperger's is I don't know. I might be incorrect on this, but from what I've done my research on, people with Asperger's and classical autism have different brains. So like a person with Asperger's is going to be different than someone with ASD level 1, but it's just that the patterns and the general like society, their outcomes are similar enough that they're considered into one thing. But I think Asperger's should still be separate. Asperger's is like really common. I think it's a lot more common than people think it is, especially in smaller degrees, because like people with autism can't fit into society well. But like the example that Mace was bringing up about like nonverbal, like I think that he should totally have the right to vote, because like tons of like nonverbal autistic people are also super intelligent, usually like very intelligent actually. So like they should definitely be able to vote, unless it's like comorbidity with like something else. In that case, they probably physically can't even vote because they won't even have the means to like move around on their own or even like indicate anything. But I don't know, that's different. I have more topics. You guys want more topics? I got like a few more.
Fun when we'll all like hate each other. We should get like a I don't know, some like a crazy person in here or something. I think we all agree with
That's
each other.
That's kind of what I'm trying to get. There we go.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I got the next topic. Should national borders be abolished in the favor of open migration?
No.
No.
Probably not.
Well, so if borders are to be eradicated, there needs to be a central government for all three countries. And I feel like that should be called the United Countries of North America.
You talk
Or
about the
com.
United States.
We could do com.
I know what you're talking
What?
about.
No, he said national.
Yeah.
I think so, like everywhere, or no, international. Did you say international, or what did you say? What was the question?
The prompt was, should we abolish borders in favor of like open migration?
Like everywhere?
I, mean,
I shouldn't have done that one because like that's like I would have argued that like crazy since.
I mean, I was about to jump in here.
com.
I kind of agree with that. I kind of agree
Like
with
everywhere? No more, but
Like-
like no borders anywhere.
Like, I'm not saying we shouldn't absolutely, like, obviously, you know, just like in between states, like different states have laws, but I can just drive there. You know what I mean? I feel like we should kind of have a similar agreement, you know, with Canada or Mexico that says the same thing.
How are you going to prevent crime?
Do what?
How are you going to prevent crime?
What do you mean?
That's where the
You break a
United
get
countries.
arrested.
So, like over in Europe, you got the European Union. So, with the European Union being like the main thing for them all being part of that union, they have like a centered spot where it regulates all the countries in general. Like if somebody does a crime in another country in the European Union, well, that person who's not a native to that country be taken back or something and tried by the European Union. If North America did the same thing, like have the United Countries of America or of North America, or if I have to include North and South America, United Countries of America, it'll be the main regulations between country and country, and people be able to go freely.
The problem there is that we have a country like Mexico, where Mexico is a massive cartel problem, and on top of that, they don't have like I
That's
don't
the
want
way
to
to
say they're in a civil war,
drug
pretty much.
problem is decriminalize drugs, and then the cartels are
That too, like you're gonna have a lot of drugs going across the border legally.
Well, we're not gonna disagree with that, but it's like if you decriminalize them, and it's like I don't think there shouldn't be like per se like border crossings or anything. Like obviously maybe like a little checkpoint, whatever. Show your passport, get ID. Obviously know who's going in and out. But also it's like if there was like a town on the border that like turned into like a big tourist destination, like do you think a person crossing like a street that's one side is in Mexico, one side's in the US, that like
There is a place like that between Canada and North America over in New York State.
Mhm.
And the way they regulate that is that if somebody happens to be a part of that community, that United States of America part of the neighborhood, and then somebody from there decides to go into the Canadian part, they may pass, but they cannot overextend 24 hours.
See, I think that there's a really good system for like something like that. It's in Northern Ireland, which I know is a different situation, but the way they do it up there is that if you're in Northern Ireland, you can choose to identify like your citizenship could be Irish or like Northern Irish. I like that because like the whole deal with Northern Ireland is that it's during the Irish Civil War and then the Irish War of Independence, Northern Ireland was full of Protestants and they were mostly English immigrants, so they wanted to stay with the crown, and everyone else was Catholic Irish people, so they were like fuck that. And now then you had like terrorism there and whatever. That's why you have like the whole like Irish or Northern Irish things, because it's a contested area.
The problem is we're all too nice to each other and we're not screaming slurs at each other. That's why this call isn't going great right now.
Fuck you, you cracker.
Hey,
You were arguing with about something.
The other day they brought up like, okay, they said something like this. They were like, it was like something along the lines, it's like public police uphold the values of corporations. And then I showed them a statistic that said like private companies are what's used for security on like corporations. So why not go for like private militias, especially in the US, because private militias can be used in political reasons as well, like in some areas. So like why not go after private security forces that like are protecting corporate interests? Oh, well, no. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but like the very first public police force was created under Emperor Augustus in the Roman Empire, literally called the Cohort Urbani. It was literally for the purpose of firefighting and for upholding order, because what would happen is private security forces that was hired by like rich patricians would just beat down random people on the street and steal their property and like take advantage of like wars and stuff. Like they were evil. So
I'm confused what you're advocating for exactly. So you said private militia. So what does that mean? Like
a private
security
militia,
guards? Like what do you
I
mean?
guess a private militia that's a paramilitary force, a private militia, but basically was arguing against public police, and my rebuttal was that public police was created for the reason to protect people and put out fires, and that's what it's
Oh, against police in general?
Yeah, like they
That's crazy, actually.
Average anarchist.
Exist. I think most anarchists believe that areas should be governed by local security forces and armed councils that are put into a decentralized command where they democratically vote upon things in the sake of when a war happens. I think that's like insanely stupid in my opinion, but like to each their own, I guess.
Wait. So what would be the replacement for police? Because like, what am I gonna do when there's like a robber in my house or something? Would I just like?
It would be public militia, so like everybody would have guns and just defend themselves. Or you would have a public militia that would be decentralized and on call, pretty much. So it'd function like police, but it would be volunteers from the community, or it would be people who are elected, or it would be people who levied, I guess, like straight up conscripted.
Would they be like trained at all?
Well, yeah, they'd be trained, but everything under an anarchist system is literally just decentralized. So like everything has to be done democratically. There can't be like a state with like laws, or well, there can be, but the state can't like the laws have to be collectively enforced. There can't be like a governing body to enforce them, which means that public police can't exist. Only public militia.
Would that mean that like over time, eventually it'll just become like, let's say we do have that sort of like thing in the real world, would it slowly just become what it is already right now, like over time?
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's just a huge loop.
They tried to do that in Ukraine under a guy named Makhno. They had the Ukrainian Black Army, they called it, and it was like the anarcho-communist army in Ukraine. The dude named Makhno quickly just became the sole warlord of the territory, and he got his ass kicked since there was no centralization. It was just like roaming cavalry brigades and like public defense forces. They got obliterated by like the fucking Soviet army. They got annihilated. Same with like the CNT-FI in Spain, which was also another anarcho-communist organization. They got fucking obliterated by the nationalists. Okay, I have another debate.
I was still asking about the anarchy police thing, but
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, go ahead. Keep asking.
How would that even work?
I don't. I guess I still don't really. I don't really get how that would be different, because you would just have like a group of people, and I assume they have some sort of authority. You said it's decent. So like, what would give them the authority to like arrest people and stuff? How would that work?
Collective interests of the people. So like anarchist politics transcends like okay, this is how it works. I'll lock in here and I'll explain it. Let's say you have the United States, and the United States is reorganized into the free territories of America. That's what they all call it. They all call it free territory because they're fucking weird. I don't know why. Basically, you have all the different states now democratically elect leaders. There will be no central like governor or anything like that. It is just a direct democracy. Those leaders are then elected to make decisions based on their own subdivisions, and then towns and municipalities can make their own decisions. So the difference in the police force is that instead of a chief or a police chief or like a city council or an internal police officer being promoted, you'd have a council of the best police officers of their different thing or how they would organize it, and people of the collective could come in to organize and basically agree upon who will do what and what tasks will be divided up and what they do and how they respond and what their protocol is. So like the idea of it is that it's easy to integrate different societies or groups because it transcends political thinking, because some territories can just be extremely conservative, some can be extremely liberal, some can have different values, but they all have to follow under the protection of like the army and like the greater cause, or like their security forces and like the public interest. So like it's basically like the power balance is balanced perfectly between the people and like the decentralized organizations. So there's like no state funding for everything. Everybody's just collectively agrees upon whatever. Yeah, it doesn't work in a society of over 1,000 people, because you like get fucking, I don't even think we could get all of us to agree on one thing here. Like if I started firing off more topics, we're just not going to agree. So imagine trying to get like a fucking New York City, like city of 8 million people, to try to agree upon one policing method. That's like not going to happen. It's just not possible. That's why it's a stupid ideology. It just won't work.
That's why it did so poorly in the Spanish Civil War. They had all of Aragonia under their control, and it did not go well before the nationalists started shelling them even.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was saying for it to even survive in Ukraine with the Ukrainian Black Army, they had to get a warlord, which is Nestor Makhno. And even then, when the Russian communists came in, they just fucking obliterated them. Like, they didn't even stand a chance. It was like one of the easiest campaigns of the Russian Civil War. It's just, it doesn't.
It also didn't help that many of the Russians also saw it, much how you've described it, as absolute insanity, and the few Tsarist forces often sparred with them, and like it made no sense. That guy was a fucking joke. He never stood a chance.
Oh wait. So
if he hadn't even smashed them, the Germans would have come across and dealt with them personally. That's a affront to the nature of the world's governments at the time. It would have been taken as such.
I didn't know anarchy worked like that at all.
There's also anarcho-capitalism, which I don't even want to get into how bad that is.
It's basically just feudalism with extra steps and somehow infinitely more oppressive than a feudalism could ever have dreamed of. It's actually quite comical. And impressive.
Comical and impressive is crazy.
I kind of want to learn more about this. This is really strange to me. I still don't even fully understand how the police would work at all. I'm just trying to like
they
look
don't
it up
understand
right
it
now.
either, buddy.
Think about it like how every arrest would have to be like voted on. Like you
is
would
that
have
actually
to,
how that would work? Like
Yeah,
would I have to vote every single police officer in?
The idea is that no man, well, they call man as people, no people should be able to have their rights trampled on. Everybody should have absolute freedom. That's the idea of anarchy, meaning that if nobody can agree on anything, therefore society has failed. And
It has to be
you have to have-
unanimous?
yeah, everything has to be unanimous.
Bro.
Especially, it gets worse because if you're an anarcho-communist, there's like justifications for like how like things could be run or like something like that. So like I would rather support anarcho-communism over anarcho-capitalism because in anarcho-capitalism, private institutions that are quote unquote elected by the people would get to run everything essentially. So private institutions could have track of every ballot, and then those private institutions would then essentially like control everything. It's literally a self-contradiction. They want to get rid of hierarchies, but they allow corporations to exist. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't understand how people even support this shit. We have ANCAPs on this server, by the way.
Well, in my experience, especially when it comes to people living in North America and such, they are quick to support systems of governance they've never had to deal with.
I
Like
know.
communism.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing these days. Didn't they make a whole new reorganized communist party in the U.S.?
Yep.
Fucking dumbasses. I mean, if they wanted experience with the whole thing, they should have just come down here, east of the Iron Curtain. They have lots of experience with it. I'm sure we could provide them all the information they'd ever fucking want. Maybe tell them to read a fucking book while they were at it.
Basically, Aiden, anarcho-communism is the end stage of communism. So that's what Marx eventually wants. Like, everybody's decentralized, everybody lives in their areas, the workers control everything. That's basically what it is. The problem with communism is getting there. There's no good means to get there.
I would also I've never argued them on this front, but how exactly do they intend on, especially like it's not the 30s or 40s anymore. There's not just under 2 billion people on this earth. There's 8 billion, almost 8.25 already. How exactly is feeding them? How exactly is financing them? How exactly is organizing a power grid for them? Like how's all that going to work? And not even accounting for the fact of national defense, or assuming, because you did mention free territories of America, would there still be nations?
No,
separate
nations
organized
don't-
collections?
Nations don't
Wait,
exist under.
It only works if like there's no other countries. It only
Yeah,
works
like
if
honestly, this seems like the
everyone
dream.
is.
Like, let's say a bunch of countries convert to this. I can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Every actually still
Stone Age
federalized country on the planet is going to blitzkrieg like it's 1940.
Invade them, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Like-
Get rid of a military, bro.
It's
It would be-
literally just Stone Age shit.
Yeah,
Like
that's exactly what it is.
Just Stone Age shit. It's literally like not even functionable as an ideology. Like anarcho-communism, you could have one commune. As long as you have one commune, anarcho-communism can work. But it's not like communism because it's just one commune. There's not different communes for them to interact. Like Marx's ideas on things are like just, I don't even know. Like at the time, they made sense. Like his theory of value and stuff, it made sense. But it has been disproven time and time again by different schools of economics, like 30
Yeah.
or 40 years after it came out.
It also doesn't help that, I mean, even just 30 or 40 years after that, he wrote all of that shit in what, the 1870s, right?
1840s.
Oh, that's even worse. So you're
Actually,
comparing the
it's pretty
pre-Victorian era then. So yeah, the difference between like even just especially 1842 to say 1870 was a difference similar in par to what we would have experienced from 1990 to like 2010. Not in certain areas, obviously, but like that, yeah. His ideas were outdated decades later, let alone by the time you had people try to implement them, such as Lenin and such. Economics changed completely, state running changed completely, the population massively increased and hit a rate of growth so insane we have what we have now. The stupidity of that didn't even survive its own half of the century, let alone the rest and anything beyond it.
Wow. I notice these people are always super passionate about their beliefs or whatever. Like they'll have like a poster or some shit in the room. I remember the first like anarchist I ever met was in a comp sci class, and she was like trans. She had like a LGBTQ tattoo, a communism tattoo, and like an anarchist tattoo, like all on her arm. They were like huge. Oh, and like an autism speaks tattoo. She was great.
I hope it doesn't hurt her getting a job in the future.
Autism Speaks is like horrible because like as an organization, it's like actually anti-autistic. It's like
It wasn't like autism. It was like some sort of like autism tattoo. I don't remember what it said. It was like a bunch of letters.
The way I've always looked at it is people that tend to believe in anarchy-based ideologies are a combination of things. Either A, the usual case of misinformed, B, they're communists that don't like communism and decided to just pick the lesser evil in their eyes. Because you know what? That's fair. If you're a communist and you see what something like Stalin did, I don't see the issue with not wanting to copy that. They just picked something even dumber. And the last one is
part mythic of the fact that they still deny genocides anyway, despite them saying they don't like Stalin or whatever.
oh, I mean that's comical then. And the third one that I've personally experienced experienced some people simply put held such a disdain for other ideologies that it pushes them into that. For example, my own, and I'm hoping a lot of you can relate to this. The U.S. is the greatest example, actually. My ideology of semi-constitutional monarchism is despised so massively in the United States that if I try to have a discussion with any actual political figures in the U.S., not like elected, there's like people like Ben Shapiro lower down, but that kind of thing, I'm going to get laughed out of the room, even if I make it clear that I'm a continental one. Europe is the only one that really makes sense to reinstitute. That doesn't matter. Same thing happens with anarchists. They look at all the issues with capitalism, monarchism, republicanism, all of it, and they say, oh, well, that's bad, so very clearly this thing over here isn't bad. They just play the whataboutism game, essentially, but with ideology. Oh, this might be bad, but what about the people suffering under capitalism? So on and so forth, with every other ideology under the fucking sun.
I know, or like the fucking stupid argument. Okay, so I was in the room with an actual communist who like organized unions. It was the only communist that I've ever met who's done ground-based. I had a debate with them in physicality because they were the head of Canada Post at one point.
Oh shit.
And they were actually like a communist and they organized labor unions. I had a debate with them, and like the problem with a communist, you cannot argue with them based on like any, widely economically agreed upon point. You cannot argue HDI, cannot argue Gini, you cannot argue anything. And I brought those points up and he was basically like, nah, read this guy named Richard Wolff. Like, I'm good on reading 200-page thesis on something that has no application to modern proven economics. It's not possible.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, a lot of communist-based ideologies are like, this is where, especially in the realm of the United States, it's really hard to argue against them. Because to argue against something and break down its points, people must first understand what the specifics of your own argument and how they correlate to their ideology. The average American is so financially illiterate, not even in their own pockets, because some aren't, many aren't. I think it's over-exaggerated in that front. But modern economics is such a foreign concept to most North Americans, South Americans, and Africans, and to a lesser extent, Europeans and Asians, that I don't think, give them some levity, because simply put, they don't understand. I mean, it's their own fucking fault they don't, but they literally don't understand the scale of economics they're referring to. They don't understand how the stock market affects, say, military development in 100 fucking kilometers, or 1,000 different kilometers in a different continent over. They don't understand the effects of increasing the tax here by 0.5 percentage points and then increasing the price of a good by $2 2 continents over. They don't look at that. They think it still works as this basic you set the price system that hasn't existed since the revolution of the stock market.
Literally ancient Rome. Like, economics was not like properly invented really until
to be fair,
Adam
I give them a pass on that because it promptly degraded back into a more simplistic thinking after the fall of Rome in the East, yes, but to a lesser extent, the Templars prevented a complete banking collapse, but the fall of Rome in the West and such, like, most of what the United States has learned and based off of in the history they teach in your schools has very little to do with the part of the Roman Empire that really expanded on that kind of financing. Hell, they don't even teach you that they're Roman. They still call them Byzantine. So it's fair that they don't know that. They were never actually taught it. They don't even acknowledge that part of the empire as Roman, so... I
mean, they called themselves Roman.
Everybody did.
Culture,
but that's besides the point right now.
Well, no, I can get into that debate, because, like, the quote-unquote Byzantine Empire, like, it was literally just the Eastern Roman Empire, and it was until it fell. They called themselves Roman until it fell. Like, I don't think that, like, Charlemagne actually has a good succession line, because it wasn't holy, it wasn't Roman, and it wasn't really an empire. It's kind of stupid to me, because, like...
Well, nobody claims the HRE as a successor in the modern age. People just did try to disprove the East line of succession.
If you wanted, the closest country, you want to know what the closest country to ancient Rome is, though, in the modern day? Like, modern countries that you can trace.
I'm assuming you're going to say Greece or Bulgaria?
Well, Greece, yeah, because the only really surviving remnant of the Byzantine Empire was a province, it was like Lycia. It wasn't fully integrated into the Ottoman Empire, and it kind of got its own autonomy until when the Greek Revolution happened. That was the main spot where it started. It was from that autonomous region, and the modern Greek state was founded upon that. So, like, there's probably some sort of, like, dynasty or line that can be traced back to like, the founders of, like, in the Greek Revolution.
Now, you are aware that, I mean, they're not, like, the term Greek and the term then describing the ethnic group is a new thing. They're Romanoi, and that's what they were self-proclaimed as well until after the fall of the Greek monarchy. But, I have no issue sidelining onto this, but we were talking about economics and the lack of understanding previously.
That's true.
Do we want to go on one last topic?
Did you write forward to backward or backward to forward?
What?
Is colonialism and imperialism still influencing the modern world, and should former colonial powers pay reparations?
Yes and no. Yes to your first point, no to your second. Mostly because A, it never really ended, so you'd be continuing the reparations in a sense, and B, simply put, most of the current nations crying for reparations are the largest perpetrators of colonialism on Earth now. Barring, obviously, the big names like the U.S., so they don't really get... No, they can go fuck themselves.
Are you saying that the U.S. did colonialism? What do you mean?
I just said that they did.
Oh, I see. You meant barring the U.S. as though we didn't do that.
No, like, I said that barring... Okay, and I'll try and explain. All of the powers that are crying for colonial reparations are the largest perpetrators of colonialism, barring the U.S. I meant in the sense of they aren't crying for shit on that front. I mean, they're crying for money in a different way right now, but they're not crying on it for the fucking 13 colonial era or anything. But India, Egypt, and other states that are trying to play that game are blatantly more colonial than any other states of their respective regions, perhaps other than the obvious ones in a few cases, such as China and such. But like, no, if you restrict yourself and ask for reparations, I would still say no, because it's not how politics works. You don't get that unless you win a war or get a treaty signed. You all agree, like most of them agree to their freedom being handed off in the case of British colonies with minimal fight in exchange for avoiding shit like that in the future. And if they want to reverse it, then, well, they better be open to opening some of those old economic controls back to the crown, because a deal's a deal. Doesn't matter how long it was signed. Just because the world has forgotten how politics works in the past 40 years doesn't mean the past 100 years never happened.
I guess I just don't see what reparations would resolve besides just like being nice. I don't really.
No,
I just don't get it.
That doesn't help. Fuck it. Fuck them. Anyone, especially India. They don't, like, God. They want to ask for reparations, and then they go fucking purge their northern provinces every other decade. It's, fuck them. A little insane, but alright. They're never gonna get it. And, yes, to the point of colonialism having never left, I simply point to France. It might not apparently be there on a map anymore, but oh, it's there, and it's doing better than ever.
Like Punjab, like how they would systematically genocide Punjab every once in a while, just because they feel like it.
India? Are we, it's who you're referring to? Or the French, or both?
India. Punjab.
Yes.
Punjab.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's what I was referring. Yeah, like they enact colonialist policies constantly, and they don't get to cry for colonial reparations. And even then, they still wouldn't.
Southern provinces because they're darker skinned.
Yeah, it's like India, especially, which is the largest crier on Earth for reparations outside the American African population. They can complain when they stop doing it themselves.
I mean, India should just be split up. Like India should just honestly be balkanized. Like I don't.
It's on its way. It's doing it. It's on its own. Give it a few decades. It'll probably not take that long. But yeah, the seeds are forming. Militias are being organized. Provincial rights are being strained. Its military is questionably loyal as it is. It's happening. Just give it a few years. And then we get a civil war with nuclear weapons involved. And let's see how that goes. But yeah, colonialism never left, and reparations are insanity. It just so happens that everyone looks at Britain when they say colonialism left. That's the only case where it did, and that's because America, great ally that they are, proceeded to strangle every British colony from their grasp and attempt to force feed them American, either ideology or economic influence. And comically, they didn't even have the ability to transfer British sphere of influence to their own. They lost most of it in a decade, which is why the Cold War was such a shit show, and why Africa was such a hotbed for communism. They destroyed the one center ruling force behind the largest swath of Africa, and then got surprised when it fell into chaos when they failed to step in and become that force instead, resulting in total economic and, not population, and organizational collapse of the first, it was British dominions of Africa and such, and then, after they played their stupid games with the French in North Africa and such, to a lesser extent, them. But the French were smart enough to write several provisions and treaties into their things that they essentially kept enough colonial powers to prevent mass collapse and still actually gain something from it. And in the case of a few countries, such as Morocco, surprisingly, they seem to actually benefit from the arrangement quite heavily. Has anyone else got anything to offer on that, or? I've been talking the whole time and it's a little...
No, like, you're honestly just cooking. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, that's a pretty true opinion.
Yeah, I don't think I'm missing
we should organize this next time, but just like get people that like I don't know, would be like Republican or something.
Hey, if you're Republican, Democrat, or anything in between, come join the server. We welcome most ideologies. And if you enjoyed that video, please like, subscribe. Don't forget to join the Discord server, link down below, and I will see you in the next video.